Well, welcome to the Unstoppable Freedom Podcast. I'm Jimmy Page. As a Christian and a proud American patriot who loves this country, loves our founding principles, and our attainable promise, I believe we are standing at a very unique moment in history. Americans have overwhelmingly rejected the progressive, woke, Marxist ideologies, and they voted for a resurgence of common sense, of timeless values and faith, and the restoration of culture. In fact, in many ways, the American way, our culture, our values, and even the American dream needs to be rescued from these radical ideologies that teach our kids to be confused about their gender, groom them for life-altering medical treatments and medications, is incapable of defining what a woman is, and allows men to invade once safe spaces for women and girls, like bathrooms and locker rooms, and ultimately that allows men to dominate women's sports. Well, this new administration has made a lot of promises to fix this disaster of the last 4 years, and they're delivering. They're delivering on these promises day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, they're rolling, and we feel hope and optimism and growing momentum. But to get to this moment, it took some very courageous people that were willing to sacrifice everything to stand up and to speak out when it wasn't popular, when they would face the angry woke mob and the cancel culture, when they would face ridicule from leftists on social media, and they did it anyway because it was simply the right thing to do. Well, today's guest is a true warrior for faith, for truth, and for common sense. Her name is Riley Gaines. Let me tell you a little bit about her. She was a 12-time All-American swimmer at the University of Kentucky. She burst onto the international stage when she competed and tied with a trans-identifying swimmer named Leah Thomas at their NCAA championships. And since then, God has given her a mission to give everything she has to protect girls and women from unfair and unsafe competition. Her mission is to build a movement to save women's sports and see a return to common sense American values. She's an ambassador for multiple organizations such as Icons Women, the Independent Council for Women's Sports, Turning Point USA, the Leadership Council. She sued the NCAA. Love that. We're going to talk about that today. She hosts her own podcast called Gains for Girls on Outkick, one of my favorites. And she started the Riley Gaines Center with the Leadership Institute. You've probably seen her on multiple podcasts, multiple TV networks, on college campuses, and rallies around the country. Riley, it is a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Well, of all of the podcasts I've done, oh my gosh, that was the best and most kind introductions that I have ever had. And it's just a joy to be on with you. I've gotten to know your family a little bit over the past few years, and just to see, of course, your son and your daughter is a testament to you. So this is the honor of a lifetime for me to be on with you, Jimmy. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. The honor's mine. And, it really was great to finally meet you and your husband in person at the inauguration events in D.C. It was a cold line we were waiting in, wasn't it?
That is to put it mildly. It was freezing, and we're wrapped around in this line. Who knows if we're even going the right direction? We got split up for a minute. We went down separate paths. Somehow we ended up back together. It was probably an hour and maybe close to 2 hours of waiting in this line. Yeah. And as a woman in heels with open-toed shoes in like what felt like negative degree weather, oh my gosh. I think if I weren't near you and we had the pleasure of being able to talk with one another and break bread, I don't know if I would have stayed in that line, Jimmy.
I'll tell you, it was a lot of fun. And there were moments when we didn't think we were in the right line, when we weren't going in the right direction. But we ended up there. We kept the faith. We have this optimism, this overcoming spirit, which obviously has helped you in every aspect of your life, especially the competitive side, but now even maybe more so in the activist side. I don't know if you ever wanted to be called an activist exactly.
I really didn't at first. I did not like referring to myself as an activist because, of course, you almost picture someone with blue hair and who was screeching. And that's not my method of doing things, but it was almost like I just woke up one day and it was this overwhelming feeling of, man, I am an activist and I'm proud to be an activist and we need more activists. Gosh, that's why the left has historically, that's why they win. That's why they have acquired every inch of the public square in regard to, of course, Hollywood and media and our government and academic institutions and corporate America. they are relentless and they have activists. They do not roll over. But of course, coming out on top, and when I say coming out on top, I'm not even just referring to conservatives or people who voted for Trump, really all Americans coming out on top because of the results on November 5th. It does instill me with a sense of optimism and just gratefulness for God's mercy that we do not deserve. But I hope, it's my prayer every night that we do not become complacent as a nation, and we keep pushing forward, just like the Democrats do.
Yeah. Well, and today we're going to have an opportunity to really kind of lay the foundation for that, you know, I've said a number of times that this fight is far from over. You know, there is a relentless nature of this progressive, communist, anti-God, anti-family, anti-freedom movement. I mean, it is relentless. And if we think we've won something just by winning an election, for example, putting someone in the White House and an administration in place that shares our values, that's a big first step. But now the real work begins. So I'm encouraged. And I know that today we're going to give the audience, first of all, a lot of fans in the audience. I know that for sure. A lot of parents, a lot of coaches, a lot of athletes, a lot of leaders of universities, a lot of leaders of high school level. So you're going to be speaking to a group that this issue really matters, right? Saving women's sports, protecting girls from unfair and unsafe situations with men. It's going to speak to that. But I want to roll back the clock a little bit. And by the way, I had a great time meeting Lewis, right? Your husband?
Yes.
Okay. So I have to come up with a nickname. Lewis is not, it doesn't roll off the tongue for me. I'm going to have to come up with a nickname for him.
I know it. I know.
I just call him the
those
Brit.
Brits, those pesky Brits, right?
Those pesky Brits. I loved him. We had a great time. Do you see it kind of as a little bit of fate that he's from the UK? He met you at UK. I mean, it's kind of fate driven here, I think.
It's gotta be, right? It's gotta be. It definitely is that, rather than me just hearing that accent day one. And I was like, I call that one. I call dibs. All my friends, right? It's almost a joke that there's a lot of, we called it swimcest, because it's inevitable that swimmers on the team date other swimmers, because
is that right?
It's all you have time for, right? You don't have time. Your schedules don't align with anything else because you're training 6 hours every day. So it's crazy. Almost inevitable. I swore I wasn't going to do it. Maybe this speaks a little bit to how I was raised, but my dad told me I was not allowed to date a swimmer because he said, any man who voluntarily wears panties to play their sport is no man that my daughter will date.
I love your father already. I love your father. Let's go.
I know it. But of course he has come around, and it has been the biggest blessing, I will say, of course, meeting him, but getting married young too. We got married in my senior year of college, and it has just been the best thing. It's a constant throughout all the ups and downs of the craziness that I have found myself immersed in. And so he's just been the biggest blessing and the biggest support to me. So awesome. I do think it's a little bit of fate from the UK and ended up at UK. Right?
Come on. Well, and I love his spirit. I mean, first of all, he's got a countenance that draws you in. He's happy. He's generally happy. You must have been stopped, 300 times in the 2 miles we walked together. And he is so good natured. And I'm sure that that it's not always that way, but I love spending time with him, having a conversation. And I found out he's a competitive swimmer, like you said. So was your first date in the pool? I mean, is that how that works?
That's pretty much all we had time for. Like I said, it was our options were either you're swimming or you're going out to eat because you're starving from swimming.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a lot of what our dates entailed, is going on, breakfast, lunch, dinner.
Yeah.
You could eat so many calories. That's the thing I miss about competitive swimming, is you could eat 10,000 calories a day to nothing, add no weight, nothing. Now it's not the case.
So post-competition, a little different. Yeah, well, now you're an adult and you're a pro. Well, it's funny, too. It's the Michael Phelps effect, right? He revealed how many calories he used to eat with his training. And it gave all of us a newfound appreciation for swimmers, for elite athletes. So let me ask you this. Who's more competitive, you or Lewis?
Oh, me, 110%. He won't even play like Uno with me, because if I lose, I'm not talking to him maybe for the rest of the week. Like, it's a problem.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
That is so good. Well, so I have a similar relationship with my wife as well. So I understand that really well. She's very competitive. And it's not beneficial for me to really compete against her. It's kind of a no-win situation for me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Louis
So
very
he's a
much
smart
is
man.
the same way, but he's a trooper. He puts up with it, and so I really have found my match, and he makes me a better person. He really does, in the way that he might egg me on, and of course we know how to instigate with one another, but at the end of the day, he makes me a better person for it. So
that's awesome. Well, that sounds like a great start to a great marriage. It is. I believe that's the way God designed marriage, right? So that you would complement each other. Of course, you play different roles. And at the same time, I've told all my kids who are all grown now that the person you end up with has to make you better, and you have to naturally make them better. It's this intentional relationship that really, in the end, helps you fulfill your God-given potential.
No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah,
Well,
awesome.
even in the way that male and female, I mean, as a whole, we're created.
Yeah.
It really is to complement each other in a way that is beautiful, right? Not one is inferior to the other, or one is superior. It's meant to complement one another, which of course is the basis of the entire fight that we have found ourselves fighting.
That's right. And it's funny. I want to talk a little bit about how you grew up and how that shaped you into the person that you are, and because that's going to kind of set the stage for, I think, in many ways, the character that you have to endure what you're enduring, and really to fight this fight and to go back on offense. So all these things kind of work together. And I do think that this whole movement really is a godly movement, right? So I've been around a lot of American patriots, a lot of freedom fighters. We've had dozens and dozens of them on the show. Overwhelmingly, they have this enduring faith in Christ, and they're not afraid to talk about Jesus. Like, the name of Jesus is a very unique name. A lot of people can talk about God, but when you bring the name of Jesus, you bring a different type of faith to the equation, a more courageous faith, I think.
No doubt about it. It makes it worldly at that point,
Yeah.
I mean, just a little background on me. Grew up in Nashville, Tennessee. Very fortunate to have the family that I do. Number one, I come from a family of athletes. My dad, he's an SEC Hall of Famer. He played football. Wow. He went on to play with the Eagles.
Come on.
We're excited about the win, and of course the Super Bowl. It is the NFL versus the Eagles. Forget the Kansas City Chiefs.
Exactly. Come on. We can all unite against the Chiefs, can't we?
Exactly. Right. Exactly. So, I mean, my dad and all of his brothers, they've won Super Bowls and done some incredible things. My mom, she was a Division I athlete. My oldest sister went to Ole Miss, and she played softball. My brother's in college now. He plays football. My youngest sister, she is 16. I would never admit this to her, but she's probably the best athlete out of all of us.
Wow.
She's an elite level gymnast and will go on to do just incredible things. So I come from a family of athletes. We always
real quick. This is interesting. So hyper competitive family, obviously. And you picked probably three sports. Okay, so we got swimming, way crazy intense. We've got gymnastics, probably more intense even than swimming, and professional football. This is not an easygoing family. This is a competitive family.
That's, again, to put it mildly. It's remarkable that me and all my siblings get along in the way that we do, and we love each other the way that we do, because we are all so driven. But again, we push each other to be better. So me and my younger sister this morning, again, she works out for gymnastics all evening long. Right after school, she goes for 5-6 hours. But in the morning before school, me and her go lift together. So at 5 a.m. this morning, we're lifting. And it's kind of embarrassing when your 16-year-old little sister is like kicking your butt. But that's a little bit about the family I come from.
So good.
In terms of the athletic side of things, we always had to be playing a sport. Now that's probably some form of child abuse for a parent to make their child play a sport. But we had to. So I'm very grateful for that. And of course, I grew up in the church. Every Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, we're there. Grew up Church of Christ, which is, pretty traditional, pretty conservative. It's your wooden pews, you've got your songbook in the back of the pew. And, I was the youngest one, bar my siblings in the congregation by at least 70 years.
Wow.
So that's a bit of a drag when you're, 10 years old, whatever it is.
That's
but
tough.
When you get older, especially when I went off to college and, my freshman year, I wasn't overly interested, to be totally honest with you, in going to church on Sunday morning. We trained all week long. We trained early Saturday morning. Sunday was our one day where we got to sleep in. I wasn't overly interested until I just felt this feeling of conviction, right? I just reached this point where I began to feel guilty. And that's when I realized I needed to have almost that spiritual awakening on my own, away from my family, to really understand and feel the Lord. So that's a little bit of my background. Prior to, I think, the really the pivotal point for me to where I guess I have the platform that I do now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's fun because I think anyone who's been raised in a faith family, a family that goes to church, that lives out their values, that lives out their faith in the day to day, it's easy to kind of identify as a Christian, especially when you're young. But then there comes that point, right? And usually in high school or college, where your faith has to become your own, where you have to say, no, this is my family values. My parents believe this, but no, I believe this. I received Christ. This is different now. I'm going to live my life in a different way because it's now my faith. You take ownership of it. So I wonder if, did you get involved in any other like ministries on campus, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, AIA, any of that stuff?
I did. Yes, sir, I did. Of course, FCA is amazing. What they are able to do and really the revival, I believe wholeheartedly, that we are seeing, especially now on college campuses, specifically with athletes, is huge.
Yeah.
Also other programs, mentoring programs specifically. One of the things that really took a lot of my time and that was really, spoke to my heart and what I felt was important, especially in the community of which our university was, Lexington, Kentucky, was a program called Amachi, where it's young children and their parents are incarcerated. And so I was, for 4 years, I was a mentor to a little girl named Cammie. She was in second grade when we were paired together. And by the time I had moved away from Lexington, she was in sixth grade. We hung out together at least once every single week, typically more often than once. And she became like my little friend. I just love her to death, even still being removed from college and back home in Nashville. We still talk. So community service was a huge part of, again, what I dedicated my time to. I ended up winning SEC Community Service Leader of the Year across all sports, all athletes. So
that's amazing. I haven't heard that before. That's amazing.
Well,
and I think your faith grows most, my faith grows most when I'm serving others, when I'm giving it away, when I'm mentoring and helping someone else discover who God made them to be.
Absolutely. Especially in those underserved communities, which, again, it's very easy to, as a Christian or as I think more specifically as a conservative, they'll call you all these names. They'll call you racist. They'll call you, I mean, everything under the sun. Cammie was this beautiful little Black girl. And again, my best friend. So to even remotely, those accusations are just silly. Again, it doesn't speak to my heart. It speaks more to their own insecurities than it does about me. That's
right. Yeah, it's always interesting when the name calling comes, right? I was told when I was growing up that you don't call people names. And here we are, we're grown adults, and people are using words and labels like that as a weapon, and they don't even know you, obviously. They don't know me. I think what happened in this whole process, and probably you might have seen this too, there comes a point when people are saying negative things about you like this, where you don't care even a little bit because you don't know it's not true. It's absolutely ridiculous. And as you said, it really says something more about them than it does about you.
Absolutely. And it didn't take me long, honestly, to reach that point. It was hard at first, being transparent, right? To be called names like transphobic and again, whatever they throw your way, no one wants to be called that. And again, knowing I'm not that, not even really understanding what that word means, first of all. Okay. So like, what a silly thing to throw my way. But it didn't take me long for that to totally roll off my back. But again, I think it's the security I have in myself, of course, number one, but more importantly in the Lord, and knowing that nothing of this world matters. It only matters what one person thinks of me, and being confident in that rolls off my back.
Yeah, it's right. You know, the stronger your identity in Christ, the easier it is to weather the storms of life and to handle the arrows of the enemy, who always wants to accuse you of being things that aren't anything that you are. And so, I think your faith, that revival of your faith in college probably, prepared you for this. So let's fast forward a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about your swimming career at the University of Kentucky. You were everybody knows this probably by now. You were a 12-time All-American swimmer. Okay. What the heck does it take to become a 12-time All-American swimmer?
Oh my gosh.
Come on.
It's amazing to even think back on. Like, I can't believe I did all that it took, because it really, like, you're practicing, at least 6 hours every single day, training at least 15,000 yards in the pool, which is equivalent to about 10-ish miles, not to mention lifting multiple times a week on top of that. Swimming 3 hours in the morning before 8 a.m. So from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m., you go to class, you come back, you swim again from 1:30 to 4:30. We ate our dinner at old people time of 4:45 because we were starving.
Wait a minute now. That's closer to when I eat now. That's a little troubling.
If you're offended by that, it probably means you're an old person. But man, that was life. It was not a normal college experience. Number one, we dealt with COVID. That was miserable, to say the least. Being a collegiate athlete.
You didn't swim with a mask, did you?
They tried. They really did try. Like, we essentially had to waterboard ourselves every day. It was the most nonsensical thing ever. Like, all of the things they tried. First of all, we're swimming in a pool with chlorine, which is going to kill any Yes, it kills everything. I didn't have eyebrows for my whole life because my eyebrows were like stripped off from the chlorine. Okay. So that's great. All of the rules and mandates and social distancing and the contact tracing and all of it was so nonsensical, as most people have, at least at this point, come to realize. So to say that it takes a lot to compete at that level is an understatement. No going out. You don't get to go to parties. You just don't have time for any of that. And quite frankly, if you did, you'd be too tired to.
Right. It is amazing, the level of commitment. I don't think that most people, I worked for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes for many, many years. And to see firsthand what elite athletes like yourself and others go through and the sacrifices that are made, the amount of time commitment. Swimming is unique because of the time in the pool. There's no substitute for time. And it's kind of like cross country. You just have to put in the miles. It's interesting. You were a senior, right, when you learned of this new swimmer who was essentially dominating in some women's swimming categories, breaking records, and literally taking opportunities from other swimmers. Tell us a little bit about when you found that out and how you figured out that this was a man and not a woman.
So in my junior year of college, I ended up placing 7th in the nation, which wasn't my best time. I knew I was capable of achieving that top spot, really setting my goal right then and there to become a national champion in my senior year. Amazing. So of course, senior year rolls around and I'm really right on pace to achieve this goal. About midway through my senior year, I was ranked 3rd in the nation. Trailing the girl in second, a girl I knew very well by a few 100ths of a second, very small margin. But the swimmer who was leading the nation by body lengths, might I add, was a swimmer that I'd never heard of before.
Wow.
And this was the first time I became aware of a swimmer named Leah Thomas. At this point in time, I hadn't seen a photo of this person, or else things definitely would have been a lot more clear. But for all I knew at the time, this was a senior from University of Pennsylvania, leading the nation again by body lengths in events ranging from the 100 freestyle, which is a sprint, all the freestyle events in between through the mile, which is, of course, the long distance. I mean, none of it made sense. And we really continued to stay in the dark until an article came out disclosing that Leah Thomas is actually Will Thomas and swam 3 years on the men's team at UPenn before deciding to switch to the women's team.
Wow.
Which, as the story goes, and probably not surprising, he was mediocre at best.
Yeah.
That's probably generous, actually. I would describe him as a less than average male swimmer competing at the Division I level in the men's division, his rightful category, ranking in the 400s and 500s nationally, to just 12 months later dominating the entire country of women.
Jeez.
I just thought that the NCAA would see it how I saw it.
I was just thinking about that, it is hard to come to grips with the fact that a man who's performing at the bottom of the rankings as a man competing against other men is allowed to just switch over and then be at the top breaking records. It's stunning. And as you said, you're probably thinking, okay, the NCAA is going to fix this.
Yeah. I was really wrong in thinking that. They saw no problem with this. And so it was about 3 weeks before our national championships in March of 2022 that they announced that his participation in the women's category was a non-negotiable, meaning there was nothing we could do. There were no questions that we could ask. There were no concerns that we could raise as women, as female athletes. We were quite literally told we had to accept this with a smile on our face. And so that first day, he swam to a national title, beating out Olympians, beating out American record holders. I mean, keep in mind, these aren't scrubs. They're the most impressive and accomplished female swimmers this world has ever seen. And he beat them all by body lengths.
Wow.
But the next day, he and I competed against each other in the 200 free. We get on the blocks and we dive off and we swim 8 laps of freestyle, and I touch the wall at the end and I look up at the scoreboard behind me, and almost impossibly enough, we had gone the exact same time, down to the 100th of a second, meaning
unbelievable
that we had tied. Yeah, which is number one, kind of embarrassing for a 6'4" man.
Yeah.
He couldn't even beat me.
It's pretty impressive though for you. And the other thing too is it feels miraculous to me, to be honest, because you tied, it created this moment, right? Like if you hadn't tied, if you had beat him, we don't know if this would have ever been exposed, but because it was an exact time, I mean, it really is miraculous, Riley.
It would not have been exposed. And
right.
I'm ashamed to say that, honestly, because this alone, this incident alone, it wasn't enough for me to say no, to say enough is enough, because, and that's not to say, I mean, I believed it was wrong the entire time. My teammates all did. My coaches did. Of course, my family did. My athletic director, everyone knew this was wrong. We knew the locker room scene was wrong. We knew how we were effectively being muzzled and emotionally blackmailed into silence. We all knew that was wrong, but it took the next part of this experience that would not have happened if we did not tie to really thrust me over the edge, which, I mean, looking back now, I mean, you just can't tell me that's not divine intervention.
Oh, 100%.
The exact same time
100%.
down to the 100th, which is rare when you're racing for a minute and 40-ish seconds. Not even 1/100th of a second separated us. But again, what thrusted me over the edge, we go behind the awards podium where the NCAA official is looking at both Thomas and myself, again, him towering over me. And the official says, "Great job, you two, but you tied and we only have one trophy. We don't really account for ties, and we're going to give that trophy to Leah. Sorry, Riley, you just don't get one."
Wow.
And that was it. That was when I asked the dreaded question of why, right? The question no one dared ask all season. And I said, why are you adamant on giving the trophy to Thomas? To which he sounded sad. The official, he looked sad. I could tell he didn't even believe what he was about to say. But he looked at me and he said, "Riley, well, I'm so sorry, but we have been advised as an organization that when photos are being taken, it's crucial that the trophy's in Leah's hands." That was it. That was it. Reducing everything we'd worked our entire lives for down to a photo op to validate the feelings of a man at the expense of our own.
Right.
Yeah, that was when I was just no longer willing to stay silent, because up until this point, I was waiting for someone else to. I think that's what it was, more than being, call it cowardice, but I think it was more so this naivety that someone else would say something.
Right.
I thought a coach would. I thought someone within the NCAA, someone with political power, someone's dad would come down there and yank this man out of our locker rooms, like my dad so desperately wanted to do.
Right.
It was in that moment.
I'm surprised he didn't. I'll bet there were moments.
It was, he called me. Of course, parents aren't allowed on the pool deck or anything. And I called him when we found out he was in our locker room. That was never disclosed. We only became aware of that once, of course, we were exposed to this 6'4" naked man, fully undressed, inches away from where we were simultaneously fully undressed. And I called my dad and I said, Dad, he's in our locker room. And he said, Riley, I've got an idea. I'm going to say I'm your university's bus driver. You come open this side door and let me onto that pool deck. And I said, great. Dad, we already have one man in the locker room. We don't need two. I've got it covered.
I love your father. I need to meet him someday. I love your dad.
I'm very blessed.
So you talk him off the ledge. He's not coming in, but he wanted to come in.
Most, I would say all good dads did.
Yeah.
They're just not okay.
Well, thanks for joining us for part one of a two-part series with an incredible guest, Riley Gaines. During this first session, you heard a lot about her upbringing, her time growing up in Tennessee, her family life, and I hope you're inspired by that. Please join us next time to talk about her journey to save women's sports. See you next time.